So now that we've moved all these files and created new versions of these, I'm going to exit out of the terminal, and what we can actually do is use the cat command to print out everything to the terminal. And let's start with the sip.conf file. So we're going to use this cat command and print out the sip.conf. Just hit enter, and I'll throw out everything that's in that file into the command line. So I'm going to scroll up a bit here, up to the top where I've entered the command, and this is the start of the file up here where it says general. And so these are just some generic settings that I found work with the carriers that we're using here. So the one thing that may change depending on how you configure your asterisk system is the default context here. So my default context is pointing at inbound schedule, and that's going to relate back to extensions.conf, and we'll talk more about that later. But for the most part, you're not going to need to do a whole lot in here except configure the registration string as well as usernames and passwords in the actual SIP peers here. So up at the top here, though, we do need to make some additional changes, specifically to if you are running your box in a NATed environment behind a firewall, these items are very important. So if you're on a static IP, you can use this extern IP and set it equal to the static public IP address that you have assigned to your through your ISP or internet provider. If you're on a DNS or a dynamic IP, public IP address from your ISP or internet provider, you're going to want to use this extern host. And that's going to need to be a dynamic DNS name that updates when your IP address changes. And what these do is allow the asterisk server to let those external carriers know, like VoIP-MS or Vitality, where you're located on the internet. So these are really important settings for when you are running in a NATed environment behind a firewall. If the asterisk server is plugged directly into the internet out on the public internet, these settings are not as important. So this is just something that you'll need to look out for if you are going to do different setups. I primarily use this extern host because a lot of my clients or users will run on a dynamic public IP address from their provider, and I just replace this with a dynamic DNS name. And it works very well, and it's pretty easy. The other item you'll need to change up here is this local net. This is going to need to equal whatever the local subnet is for the local phones. So if you set up a VLAN that has a specific subnet, you want that to match if it's for the phones only. In our environment here, we've been using the 192.168.1.110, or I'm sorry, 192.168.110.x. So the server IP address is 212. So you just need to make sure that matches. So you'll have to go through and figure out what your local subnet is. Or you can actually just comment this field out and it'll allow any phone to register. This is really going to just help you segment the network a bit. And then here we have the registration string, which we've talked about in depth before. So you'll have to come in here, just replace this with the username and then your password, and that'll set up that registration. And then again, the SIP peer for VoIP-MS down here, you'll want to replace the usernames and again the passwords. And then once you do that, everything else around this SIP file is already pre-configured. You might want to come in and change caller ID names to match the name of the user, and then possibly change the passwords for the SIP devices. I have set this up so that it uses the G729 codec in all the SIP peers. So it's important that you do install G729 to use this config. Otherwise, you could just do a replace on everywhere it says G729 and make it ULaw, and then you wouldn't have that requirement for G729. So this is how the SIP file works. You can see that I've included the mailboxes, so those are going to relate back to voicemail, which is another file that we'll look at and make sure that you know which changes to make in there as well. So everything else in here looks good. After making those changes, you shouldn't need to do anything else. Next, we'll take a look at some of the other files.